So in lecture 12, we spoke about blockchain implementation. Now in lecture 13, we will look at the various phases of blockchain implementation. So do you know what are phases?
Phases is like start to end and some like stages, first stage, second
Correct.
stage.
So what happens basically, I want to implement blockchain. So I can't say today I start and tomorrow I finish. I'll have to do it in phases. I have to get things ready.
So a proper planning is required.
Yes, a proper planning is required. So let's see the different phases. So we start with the first phase, that is the finalization of the use case, where we do a process called as explore the business process, design the use case, build it and test it. In phase 2, we will look at proof of concept. We look at whether it is viable or not, whether it is feasible or not. In phase 3, we talk about a 3D organization like design, development and deployment.
Okay.
And in phase 4, we do what is called as scaling up in terms of moving beyond the organization into a consortium or a community. Do you recollect in the earlier lecture I've once spoken about networked communities?
Yes.
In blockchain?
Yes.
So this is basically a consortium or community which we speak about. So here, when you talk about a group of organizations working together, there'll be membership involved because there'll be a group who wants to come together. Leadership will be there, somebody who will control everybody. There'll be funding because money will be involved, and there'll be some rules and regulations in place. That's the governance. So these are the various phases in blockchain implementation. So let's dive deeper into these phases and look at in the next slide.
What is the first phase? Finalize the use cases.
Yeah, correct. So what do we do in finalization finalization of the use case?
You had told about we would be exploring, designing, building, and then testing the application.
Correct. So step by step, what do we do is we first have the first step, that is, will the blockchain adoption make a difference to the business? Will it help?
Right. It should be profitable. Otherwise, it's of no use.
No use, and it should not be an added burden to the organization. So should be a replacement, not a burden.
Right.
Then the next is finalize the use case. So the use case has to be finalized as to what are we going to store in the blockchain. Then we analyze the use case to exploit the benefits of blockchain.
Right. It shouldn't be an overhead. Properly, we should be able to gain all the benefits.
And then we will map all the business processes to the use case. So this is your phase 1, that is finalizing the use case.
Mapping all business process to use case, would it be something similar to a use case diagram? Or
we don't, that is not the use case we talked about here. In the in software engineering you talk about use cases. This is different.
Right. Okay.
The use case here is like a workflow, a business process which has to be executed, and we now are going to take this data and store it in the blocks.
Okay.
So that's mapping the business process. Now if all the steps are not mapped, then you will not be able to execute the blockchain and the data will not be stored correctly. So mapping becomes important. Then we look at phase 2, that is POC or the proof of concept. This is where it's very important to see the viability and the feasibility.
Right.
It's the things look very good and you say, let's all come implement and do something, but is it really viable? We need to check that first. So we define the minimal viable ecosystem, and we also define an onboard team. We have a team in place because somebody has to do the whole POC. You can't leave it to anyone at all. So we define the minimum viable ecosystem. What is the minimum POC we need? We have an onboard team. Then we develop the functional and the technical architecture of this blockchain. How many peers? What is the data in each block? How many transactions in each block? How many blocks can we store?
So here we would also be selecting the type of blockchain.
Yes, we have already spoken about that earlier. So the type of blockchain, public, private, and so on. Then we'll select the blockchain technology stack.
So
which
here
platform?
platform, even who would be the nodes?
Yeah, correct. Who will be the peers? How many peers will be there, and so on. And after that, now once we decide all this ecosystem together, then we will build and test the POC iteratively. Add a few more features and again test it to see that it is working properly. Once we have tested the POC, then we will confirm its value and identify if there are any other challenges in it.
Okay.
And if there are no challenges, the POC is successful, then we can move further to the next phase. That is, at the organization level, we will design, develop and deploy the blockchain.
Fine.
So this may have multiple use cases, not just one. And then comes the last phase, that is, it's working well for an organization. That's good. But what when data has to be shared among organizations?
So here we will be deciding to scale it up.
To scale it up beyond the organization to multiple organizations together, maybe a consortium of organizations or a community. So this is where we'll focus on membership, leadership, funding and governance. Means we will first develop an operating model and governance mechanism so that we can put the organizations together so that they interact with each other. We will also expand on the minimum viable ecosystem. We will create and join to make a consortium of a limited number of organizations together. Then we will pilot the blockchain in a live production environment. So we have done in the organization, we now move it to among the organizations. Also note that the organizations may be different. So the blockchain which was working well in the organization level, you may have multiple organizations having their own blockchain. Now you are combining them together and maybe you have multiple blockchains or you may have a side chain. Then after this, we can design the rollout strategy and integrate it with the legacy systems which are there in place.
Okay, so we don't really need to start from the scratch. We can even combine it with the already existing
Yeah,
systems.
we may need to do that because no point in storing all the data from that again back into the blockchain. And after this, we can industrialize the technology stack, we can engage the regulations, and we can institutionalize the operating structure for using the blockchain.
That was really helpful.
Yeah. So, as we explained in the earlier slide, we started with phases of blockchain implementation where we spoke about finalization, POC, organization, scaling up to consortium community. We explained the same in this 4 parts. And as you see, we move from the use case to POC to organization level blockchain to consortium level blockchain. And this is how we have explained to you the phases of blockchain implementation. In lecture 14, we will look at blockchain adoption.